Morning. Well, just about. It is Sunday. Actually it's quite a bright day now. It started out by raining. I sat on the balcony this morning and had my cup of coffee. It was very nice. Before I came in here and I sat down, I switched everything on and I started playing around with all kinds of melodic sounds with techno beats. But the reason this week's pad ran, I was struggling for a subject midweek about what I was going to talk about on Sunday. And in fact, I actually came up with 3 subjects towards the weekend, and I decided I was going to talk about this one today because I thought it was apt. So in the week, I got an email from Korg. So obviously I own a Kronos. I'm affiliated to the Korg owners, users group, whatever it is. And I got an email from Korg saying the latest Korg gadgets has been released for this. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is, product plug, this is a Nintendo Switch. Now, I don't have any gaming consoles, okay? I'm not like most people my age who tend to have an Xbox, a PlayStation or both. I don't have any of those. My son used to have one. I never played it because I was useless at it. But I used to have a Wii. Now, going from the Wii, I then bought a Nintendo Switch, which is this. And the reason why I have a Nintendo Switch is very, very simple. I travel a lot, and it's fairly easy to sit in a lounge somewhere and while away an hour while I'm waiting for an aeroplane to arrive and just play Mario or something else. In fact, actually, I tend to end up playing Mario Kart because I love the game. Anyway, so they've released gadgets for this thing. Right, I have no idea what they're like. I've never loaded the gadgets on here, and nor would I probably want to, because I can't really see how this is going to enhance my creative ability. Let's put it that way. But there is a Korg gadget for this where you can actually record and it looks like it will step sequence. But why would you? In my arsenal of portable devices, I have my Mac. Okay, I classify that as a portable device because it goes with me everywhere. I also have an iPad, which also goes with me everywhere because it's far easier to grab the iPad out when you're sitting somewhere where you just need to read an email or something than it is to pull the Mac out. And then I tend to have a phone. Like everybody else has now, a phone. One of these things could launch a Saturn V rocket. Okay, there's more computing power in one of these than there was to actually send people to the moon. And yet we can't put people back on the moon at the moment. But that's the reality of it. The reality of it is there is more computing power in here than there was in the computer that controlled the Saturn V rocket that sent them to the moon. We digress. Now, like a lot of the manufacturers, Korg, Roland, I'm not sure about Yamaha. I haven't come across any Yamaha ads, but I'm sure they exist. Just I don't have any Yamaha kit that's probably new enough to actually warrant them. But Korg and Roland have produced apps for their latest line of synthesizers. So I have sitting on my main iPad, which is not here, I have the Korg Kronos programming screen. So effectively you link your iPad to your Korg Kronos by Wi-Fi, and then you can effectively have 2 screens of Kronos information one by one. Now I tend to use my iPad for programming because my iPad is a 10-inch screen, and the reason I'm waving this pen around is because I've just picked this pen up to do something, and I use one of these things, which is a soft-tipped pen, to actually press the buttons. Because I tend to find with a lot of these app-based creative devices, they try to pack a lot of information onto the screen, and my fat little digits struggle to get it into the right point, whereas this has got a much finer point on it, and it tends to be able to tap the bit I want very easily. So that's reality for me. I struggle with the interfaces because there's so much information on screen, especially when you come to program a synthesizer, that my fat little digits always, I end up moving backwards and forwards, just frustrating myself. So I tend not to do it with that. I tend to use one of these. And quite often you will find this one tends to live here on this keyboard, and I've got one that lives on the Kronos, and I've got one that lives on the Jupiter 80 as well. So I've got them in various different places for programming the keyboards, because I find it easier. I've also got the Jupiter one, which is actually on this iPad, because Roland have decided not to update the application. So when they dropped support for the Jupiter 80, what they also did was they completely dropped support for the entire ecosystem that the Jupiter 80 had. So if you were like me, had the application on the iPad, and what's really, really funny about this actually is the fact that when I bought the Jupiter 80, I actually got a free iPad to run the app on. So now they've dropped support for the Jupiter 80, and the iPad app is no longer being updated, which basically means I can't run it on my brand new iPad. I can only run it on my old iPad, which has an older operating system on it, because Roland are not updating it. They should be taken into a yard, and somebody should be summarily whipping them for this one, because I've said this before, I'll say it again. We spend our money on your products, we expect you to support them. Now, if that means porting the app from one version of iOS to the next version of iOS, guess what? You should damn well do it. And you should carry on doing it for at least 5 years after you drop support for the actual synthesizer. If you look around my studio, and I've said this before, I've got kit in my studio that goes back 30 plus years, and I'm still using it. It is still as good as it was when it came out of the factory. Now, it's not as good as it was compared with some of the equipment that we now have, but that's a different kettle of fish. Technology moves on. But if you're not carrying on supporting these apps per se, then give it the code to somebody who will. Let them charge us $5 to annually subscribe to it, and do it that way. But don't just drop support, because that is disloyal, I think, to your customers. Anyway, going back to these things. I also have on my apps a couple of other apps here. I have something called the Korg Electribe, and I'll put that up here. And I use that quite often for pinching drum and bass lines out of, because it's very good at that. So there have been lots of those in here, and I can play around with them, and when I'm happy then I tend to transpose them onto here. Now this is great if I'm travelling, so I can play around with the drum or bass line when I'm travelling, and when I come back here, or I can go back to the studio, because this is all going back to the studio next week, but when I come back here I can sit down and I can program the bass line into either the TR8 or the TR09 or the TR08 I've got in the studios. So dead easy, or I can reprogram the bass line. You get the drift. It's a creative tool. Okay, I use it for creativity. I don't use it for recording. I don't record off of this thing, and I'll come to the reasons why in a minute. The other one I have on here, which I use quite often, is there is a 808 drum machine, which allows you to play around with just drum hits, if you like. And you can do a couple of other things on it, but it's fairly basic. And then the other one I tend to have, which is on both this and the other iPad, is the Korg. Let's just boot that up. Gosh. Okay. The Korg IM1, which is an M1 emulator, and this has got a sort of little 2-octave keyboard down the bottom of it. Okay, and the problem with that is that my fat fingers really don't fit the centre of the keys on that, so can't play anything meaningful on it. But it is quite good for playing around with sounds and sound parameters, because it allows you to change the sound parameters, which I can then transpose back onto an M1. You can do a couple of other things on here as well, which I really don't get into. But it's quite a good little tool for that sort of stuff. But if I come and look at my iPads and my portable environments and say, do I have any DAW capability? The answer is no, I don't. Because I really struggle, and I struggle in several ways. One is time syncing and time coding, making sure that all the instruments are talking the same language and the same clock. When you set up a MIDI environment, or you set up the environment as it's set up here, it's quite easy to specify which is your master clock source. Okay, you just have to route the MIDI that way. I tend to find, I have found with this, trying to set the master clock source up as the DAW for argument's sake, and have all the keyboards or USB devices attached to it talk to the DAW and remain in sync with each other. For whatever reason, I've always struggled with that. I don't know what it is, but some keyboards will just automatically drop into sync, others will not. So I've had problems with that. The second is that you can't really get decent quality audio out of the headphone jacks of this. Okay, you need an audio interface. And again, with the computer, I've got a really good audio interface. I've got a Focusrite audio interface in the studio, which I use all the time. And then when I'm on the road, I tend to use a GoPro mixer as an audio interface. Now, the GoPro mixer isn't bad, actually. I have to be honest. I mean, it's quite a nice little compact unit. Draws power from the device, which means the device tends to go through battery much quicker. You don't get an awful lot of time. But I have that. I've tried lots of other portable USB devices over the years, iRig, M-Audio, and what I've found about them is that either they're too big and bulky, or they just don't do what they say on the side of the tin. So for example, the iRig would only record one channel of audio, unless you had something plugged into both channels of audio. Which you're going to say, okay, fair enough, but if you've got a microphone, that means you've got to somehow split the microphone signal to run into both channels, which I didn't really, I couldn't work out why that was so, and when I tried to run it into some sort of recording media, I struggled with that as well, because it kept wanting to go to a mono signal rather than trying to split the audio to go across two channels. But it wasn't a true stereo feed anyway. So I sort of struggled with that. And then, as I say, I kind of struggle with the interface and fat fingers and trying to actually control it. I always found I was sort of like trying to hit the wrong key, which then I ended up going back to my my pointer device, which is underneath the iPad on the table here. So I've really struggled with the whole mobile thing. Now, where I have used the mobile devices for is I've tended to use them where I was doing something like and I wanted to record. I had an idea, and I wanted to record that idea down. And I tend to use my mobile phone for that, because I can just sort of bonk it next to a speaker and record something. And I tend to just literally record it straight onto the video app on the phone, if I'm honest. Quite often, if I can do it, I try to record what I'm doing with my fingers as well, because I'm the world's worst at remembering what I was doing with my fingers to actually create that sound. So quite often I sort of stick it above the keys somewhere, or hold it up there with a piece of tape while I'm doing what I'm doing. But it's just literally for recording ideas, so that when I come back to the studio and I'm sitting down, I can take those ideas and I can expand those ideas, or I can just say it's load rubbish, whatever it happened to be. But that's what I tend to use it for, and that's it. So it got me thinking, after ranting on for 11 or 12 minutes, what is it you guys use these things for? Do you actually use them for recording? I mean, I see people out there playing guitars into these things and what have you, but is this the device to do that on? And I would say these are demo devices. You can get some great demo work out of them. Would you get a song out of it? Would you get something you were happy to send to a publisher out of it? Would you get something you're happy to send or release to the public out of it? Because I feel you can't. I'm not saying the technology's not there. I think iPads are great. I mean, I wouldn't be without my iPad. It travels with me everywhere I go. But I use it for predominantly when I'm on the road. I use it for checking mail, looking at stuff on websites. Writing this, I tend to write quite a lot of my blogs and video script and ideas while I'm on the road, sitting in airport lounges and that such things. So I use it for that. It's fantastic for doing that sort of stuff. But being your main door, no. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you use them for? Maybe we can do another video in a few weeks' time where I sort of collect some of your feedback and we'll see where we go. But I'm sorry, gadgets on this, that's a gimmick.
Remember, hit that like button if you like what you saw. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about more rants, more mailbag, more questions and answers, and more videos about this sort of stuff when it's loaded to the channel. Until next time, bye-bye.